Are we ready to proceed? Okay. Good afternoon and welcome to the online hearing of the Committee of Adjustment for the City of Ottawa. The Committee of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial tribunal appointed by City Council to make decisions on certain types of applications under the Planning Act. My name is John Blatherwick and I'll be chairing the hearing this afternoon. With me are my fellow panel members, Bonnie Oakeshron, Stan Wilder, Michael Wildman, and Heather McLean. Please take note that this video conference is being live streamed on YouTube. The video will be archived along with today's agenda on the city's website. Before we begin, we have a few items to outline for your information. While the issues surrounding development in the city are broad, our mandate is quite limited. The committee cannot consider aspects of the proposal that are not related to the required variances, noise pollution, property maintenance, property values, prosecution for illegal construction, personal comments regarding neighbors, agents, or applicants, and additional variances without proper public notice. If there is an identified need for an additional variance or variances, including an increase in the extent of the relief required, the recirculation of the application is required. As part of the statutory public participation or public notification requirements, each applicant was required to post a sign on the property to file a statutory declaration. And I don't believe we have any of those. So what we will have to do is administer the oath or declaration before we can proceed with any of these applications. Regarding quorum, if this is lost during the hearing due to the technical difficulties, the proceedings will be paused to allow time for the resolution of the issue. Failing the ability to reinstate quorum, hearing of the items remaining will resume at the outset of the next regularly scheduled meeting of the committee. In terms of the hearing process, listed on the agenda and appearing on the screen are the applications that we will hear today. For the sake of efficiency, the committee may deal with agenda items in a different order. Note that the committee members have reviewed the application materials prior to this hearing and any written submissions received in support or in opposition. In addition, the committee will hear today oral submissions from any interested parties as part of our proceedings. The committee may ask for a brief presentation by the applicant, followed by questions from the members where clarification may be required. The public submissions portion of the hearing will then begin, and any interested parties will be invited to make their submissions to the committee. Panel members may then ask follow-up questions where additional clarification may be required. When you are called upon to provide your comments, we will ask you to do the following. Please start with stating your name and municipal address for the record. We may ask you to spell your name. Then begin your submission by addressing your comments to the panel members. You may ask questions, but please direct them only to the chair. Please limit your comments to a maximum of 5 minutes. Any exceptions will be at the committee's discretion. Once all interested parties have had an opportunity to address the panel, the public submissions portion of the hearing will then be closed. The committee will then make an oral decision to either grant or deny the application. The committee may also choose to reserve its decision. In such case, the panel will deliberate further on the evidence presented immediately following adjournment of the public hearing. In either case, the committee will send within 10 days of the decision and to all the parties and those who have requested it, a written notice of decision that sets out the reasons for the decision. Decisions of the Committee of Adjustment may be appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal for a fee within 20 days of the date of the written decision. Only the applicant, the City of Ottawa, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, a specified person, and certain public bodies that have an interest in the matter may appeal the decision. Specified persons and certain public bodies do not include public utilities that do not include an individual or a community association. Before we begin, are there any declarations of interest regarding applications before this panel today, or panel 2 or panel 3? Okay, none seen. We have one set of minutes to confirm. These are the minutes from January 11th, 2023. I think we've all read them. Any adjustments, any amendments needed to these minutes? Okay. All in favor of adopting the minutes as presented? All right. Thank you very much. And excuse me for 2 seconds. I have to find my oath or declaration because I've left it off the desk. 1 second, please. There are occasions where I've forgotten to administer the oath and have to be reminded, and I certainly don't remember the text. All right. I'll move on to the regular agenda. We have no request for adjournment today, so we can go straight to the regular agenda order. The first item we will deal with today is item number 1. This is in regard to 317 and 319 Lincoln Avenue. It's an application to subdivide the property into 2 parcels of land to establish separate ownership for each half of the existing semi-detached building, each containing a secondary dwelling unit. And the agent for the applicant is Mr. Robinson. Is he there?
Yes, I am. Good afternoon.
Afternoon, Mr. Robinson. Before we begin, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I do swear that to be true.
All right. Is there anything you'd like to add to what we have received regarding this application?
No.
This is just a simple severance.
Correct.
Constructed dwelling. All right. We note that there are 3 conditions.
Yes.
Independent services confirmed, joint use and maintenance agreement, an agreement for noise, Richmond Road, Churchill Avenue, Byron Avenue. You're aware of those?
Yes. Yes, I am.
Okay. All right. In regards to the consent application for 317 and 319 Lincoln, any comments or questions from the other members of the panel? All in favor of this consent application? Your consent is approved. Thank you, Mr. Robinson.
Thank you very much. Have a good day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Next application is item 2 on the agenda. This is in regard to 255 Metcalf Street. It is an application to permit reduced parking and visitor spaces and reduced amenity area for the construction of 3 additional units in the basement of an existing 8-story, 60-unit mid-rise apartment building. And the agent for the applicant is Simran Soor. Hi there.
Hi.
Before we begin, administer the oath. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I swear.
Okay. We note that there are several the Centertown Community Association objects to this application, and there are comments apparently coming in from the Tennis Association at this building, 255 Metcalf. So we'll be hearing from those folks as well. But if you'd like to proceed with your application, please.
Oh yeah, sure. I sent some presentation slides if the coordinators could put them up.
Okay.
Thanks. So good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Simran Soor, and I'll be presenting the minor variance application for the property municipally known as 255 Metcalf Street. Next slide, please. The subject property is located in the Centertown neighborhood within the city of Ottawa's Somerset ward, and you can see the property on the image in front of you. Next slide, please. The subject property is a corner lot located at the southeast intersection of Metcalf Street and McLaren Street. The subject property has a lot frontage of 33.4 meters on Metcalf Street, 36.2 meters along McLaren Street, and a lot area of approximately 1,207 square meters. And the subject property is currently occupied by an 8-story apartment building with 60 dwelling units. Next slide, please. So this is just an image of the existing 8-story building taken from the corner of Metcalf Street and McLaren Street. Next slide, please. And this is just another image of the existing building, and this is taken looking north from Metcalf Street. Next slide, please. So the proposal seeks to add 3 additional dwelling units in the basement of an existing building. So the image in front of you shows the proposed site plan, and the part in red just shows the existing building footprint, while the double lines separate the garage from the basement. So the built form of the building will not be altered to facilitate the development of these new dwelling units, and no modifications are proposed above grade. Window wells are going to be provided below grade to allow light and emergency egress for the new units. And this application is currently part of an ongoing site plan control application. Next slide, please. So the slide in front of you highlights the requested variances. So all 3 requested variances are existing conditions that are not being altered with the addition of 3 dwelling units in the basement. So we'll just go quickly into the rationale for the variances. So the first test for minor variances is that the general intent and purpose of the official plan is maintained. So the subject property is designated minor corridor and the downtown core transect, and it's also subject to the evolving neighborhoods overlay. So the proposed development meets the intent of the official plan, as it allows for intensification on the subject property with no impact on the streetscape or character of the neighborhood. The subject property is in a prime location for intensification, as it is located within walking distance of a number of commercial, employment, and transit amenities. So the minor variances maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan. Next slide, please. The second test for minor variances is that the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw is maintained. So the subject property is zoned residential 5th density, subzone B, exception 479, with a height limit of 19 meters. The proposed dwelling units within the existing mid-rise building are permitted in the R5 zone. Despite the reduction in resident and visitor parking, the proposal meets the intent of the zoning bylaw, as it provides adequate parking for both residents and visitors while supporting the city's 15-minute neighborhood objectives. So the slide in front of you shows that the subject property is well located within walking distance of a number of amenities, including many parks, restaurants, shops, and offices. And the Parliament LRT station is located within a 15-minute walk. The number 14 frequent bus route is also available within a 3-minute walk. So this proximity to transit and cycling infrastructure means that residents and visitors can access the subject property without a motor vehicle. Next slide, please. The proposed development will also meet the intent of the amenity area provisions to ensure that adequate space is provided to residents for passive and active recreational use. So despite the reduced amount of amenity area, residents will still have access to space for passive and active recreation. The existing building contains a large rooftop terrace for communal use, and no additional amenity space is being proposed in order to maintain the character and built form of the existing building. There are also a number of parks and recreational amenities within walking distance of the subject property, which you can see on the image in front of you. These park spaces will provide current and future residents with adequate space for passive and active recreational use. So the minor variances meet the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. Next slide, please. The third test for
However,
minor.
for your information, the amenity space requirements are subject to the site, not to a park which is within a 2-minute drive or 2-minute walk.
Yeah, that's fair. However,
It's more than fair. That's the bylaw.
Yeah, I understand. That was just provided for illustrative purposes. I can go into that a bit more as I go through the tests as well.
Curious, how large is the amenity space on the roof?
So that is 226 square meters, I believe.
Okay. Right, and it's available to the tenants of the building at all times?
Yeah.
All right. Okay,
and it's an existing condition, so the existing units already have access to that.
Understood. Okay, please proceed.
So the third test for minor variance is that the minor variance is considered desirable for the use of land. So the proposed variance is considered desirable for the use of land, as it will allow for the addition of 3 basement dwelling units in the existing building, and will allow for intensification on the site without any changes to the building or impact on the heritage character of the neighborhood. The proposed variances will also maintain the existing number of parking spaces and amenity area while allowing for additional units. So the minor variances are considered desirable for the use of land. Finally, the fourth test for minor variance is that the variance is considered minor in nature. So the proposed variance for the reduced number of parking spaces is minor as it's an existing condition, and it constitutes a reduction of 1 parking space. So this reduction will have a minimal impact as the subject property is well located in proximity to transit service and commercial amenities, which means that residents will be able to access their daily needs without a vehicle. The proposed variance for a reduced number of visitor parking spaces is also minor, as the reduced number of visitor parking spaces is, again, a legally non-conforming existing condition. The addition of 3 basement units requires an increase of only 0.3 visitor parking spaces. So a reduction of less than 1 visitor parking space for the proposed development is considered minor. The subject property is also well located within walking distance of frequent bus service, an LRT station, and bike lanes along O'Connor Street, Lyon Street, and Laurier Avenue. The subject property's proximity to transit and bicycle infrastructure means that visitors will be able to access the property through alternative modes of transportation. So the proposed variance for the reduced amenity area is also minor, as it again reflects an existing condition on the subject property. So as I mentioned before, the existing rooftop terrace provides 226.7 square meters of amenity space. The addition of 3 units requires an increase of only 18 square meters of amenity area. The remaining reduction in amenity area is a legally non-conforming condition of the existing building. So a reduction of 18 square meters of amenity area is minor. As I mentioned before, the reduced amenity area also has a minimal impact on residents because there's park space available within a block of the subject property. So even though it's not on the property, it's within a block.
And the at-grade gravelled space has never been used as amenity space by this building?
No, so that was not included in the amenity area calculation because even though it's space, it's not grassed. Residents don't really have access to it, so we didn't think it'd be really fair to count that as amenity area when it's not really amenity area at all.
So they're amenity spaces on the roof, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so based on this, the variances are considered minor in nature. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, the proposed variances maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan and the zoning bylaw. Furthermore, the requested variances are considered desirable for the use of land and they're minor in nature. So it is our opinion that the proposed variances meet all 4 tests of the Planning Act and represent good land use planning. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any questions from the panel regarding this application? Other members? Okay, we have, I note that the planning department has no concerns with the application. Hydro Ottawa has no comment. There are no requested conditions as well. However, we have 2, I believe 2 groups of people who would like to, the organizations like to speak to us. We have Brendan Knight from the Centertown Community Association, who's on our speakers list. Is she there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right.
Thank you very much. If you
Tonight
can hear,
we've received your letter, so
yes,
if you could briefly explain your concerns.
yes. Okay, so my name is Brenda Knight. I am on the board of the Centertown Community Associations. I work
And
with.
your address for the record, please.
Oh, I'm sorry, 151 Bay Street.
Okay.
Unit 406.
Okay.
Is that
Please
okay?
proceed. Yep, that's fine. Thank you.
So yeah, no, I work with our anti-racism working group, our housing affordability group, and I happen to live in a condo that has no visitors parking. Anyhow, I'm not going to go over the letter, but I would just like to share some points that we had at our planning meeting on this issue. As a community association who represents residents here in Centertown, we've learned a lot from COVID and last year from the convoy. And we think it's very important that we work together to be mindful of what happens when people are isolated without social connections and the help required to remain where they live. So I kept hearing the word, this is minor, this is minor. It's not minor. Okay, why do I say that? The demographic statistics of our ward are constantly ignored and overlooked. We have the 2nd highest population of seniors in Ottawa, and we are the poorest. Thus, many seniors are trying to survive with the increasing rate of rents. They can no longer afford a car or perhaps can no longer drive one. So we want to stress the importance of helping them to be able to retire and remain in their home. This means making sure seniors can get the services, care, and social engagements that they need. This is why we cannot agree with requests for there to be no visitors parking. We need to remind everyone that poor snow removal is one of the major complaints in this ward. It was with McKinney, and Ariel at our AGM last week said she had 240 complaints. So it's a big issue. So the assumption that folks can walk home with groceries or to an appointments versus having a support person come to their home doesn't work for at least 5 to 6 months of the year. Also, there has been a significant reduction of street level public parking lots in the area, street parking alone due to the new bike lanes. So services that are needed or family who want to visit have nowhere to park in many areas in the core. Deliveries are a real problem, and this is happening on an ongoing basis. So currently, I think it's 60 units are in that home, and there's 22, in that building. And there are currently 22 parking lots. Is it possible to convert a couple or allocate a couple of those for visitors parking to meet the needs of the people in the building? And we want to stress something here. We don't want any of these changes to cost, to add anything to the rent of people living in the building, okay? Last 2 points we'd like you to consider. One, that gravel unused space that's over the roof of the parking lot, could that not be used for visitors parking? I don't know, but this is something that could be considered. Or perhaps we could put a couple planters there and have a little bit of green space and a bench for people to enjoy outside and not have to be on the roof. Lastly, we also strongly suggest that accommodations must also be made for additional bike parking space. It was brought to our attention from connections with people in the building that the current space is full and residents now must take their bikes to their units. Thank you very much for allocating the time for us to make our presentation.
Thank you very much. Ms. Soar, Mr. Chown, response to Centertown Community Association.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I will be brief. I think it's fair to say that the Centertown Community Association's concern is mostly related to the relief being sought with respect to visitor parking. So a number of comments or observations to make. Firstly, no change to the current situation. There is no visitor parking today. The only reason we're before the committee today is our client wishes to add 3 more units in the basement of the building. And as a result, the building permit application is going to require a review of the provided parking. And through that, it will be identified that there will be a shortage on the visitor parking. The application today is simply to recognize the existing condition. Those 3 new units alone don't result in any additional requirement for visitor parking. It's a good question about whether or not we could convert some of the tenant parking in the building to visitor parking. A couple of comments on that. Firstly, it would then lead to a further relief, obviously being required with respect to tenant parking. But more importantly, from a practical perspective, unfortunately, there's really no way to provide visitor access to that garage. It's secured. It's only accessible by the tenants using a fob or a key pass. We can't make the garage accessible to the public at large. It just isn't practical to do that. Lastly, Mr. Chair, I'll just make a personal observation. I was downtown yesterday for a meeting at the Jack Purcell Community Center, which is just around the corner from this site. I had absolutely no difficulty finding parking. There's lots of on-street parking available on Metcalf and on McLaren. There also are public parking lots within a block of this site. So there's lots of places for visitors to park if they're coming to this building. Allowing the variances is simply going to allow for the addition of 3 new units. Those additional 3 new units are not going to create new pressures with respect to visitor parking. I would encourage the committee to approve the variances sought with respect to both parking and the amenity space. Just an aside, unfortunately, that gravel area on top of the existing garage certainly isn't accessible for cars. I don't think there's any way we could park on it. It also is difficult to access, which is why it's not currently being used as amenity space. I'll leave it at that for now, Mr.
What's the
Chair.
parking situation in front of the building on McLaren?
So there is on-street parking on the north side of McLaren.
Not the south side.
No, not on the south side.
So there's no drop off in front of the building.
No, you'd be across the street.
Okay. Right. Okay. Right. Thank you, Mr. Chen.
Sorry,
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just to add to Mr. Chan's comment, with respect to on-street parking, there is on-street parking on the east side of Metcalf. So that's actually where the front entrance into the building is. So there's parking that's available on the same side of the street there.
All right, thanks. I believe that the Tenants Association of 255 Metcalf wanted to speak to this as well. They have a representative online at the present moment.
If the representative could raise their hand, I'll bring them in. Not seeing any hands.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Chair, if I may, we've obviously seen the comments from the tenants. I would suggest to yourself and the members of the committee that those concerns may or may not be valid, but I don't think they have anything to do with the applications that are before you this afternoon.
That was my assessment, Mr. Chen.
Thank you very much.
Any questions, comments from the other members of the panel? So unfortunately, visitor parking is not a possibility because it's a secured access to the basement garage.
Yes, sir. Regrettably, that's the situation.
Yeah. The addition of 3 additional units is not even going to create a need for 1 more parking space.
Correct.
And all of these variances reflect an existing condition.
Yes, sir.
Excuse me, am I allowed to ask a question? If I'm not, I will step back.
Just very briefly, please, just ask. Go ahead.
I understand that access is with a fob, but the resident could give the fob to the person to have a visitor's parking spot.
I don't think that's possible in this case, from what I understand from
Okay.
from the applicant's agent.
Thank you.
All right. So in regards to the variance request for 255 Metcalf Street, all in favor of the application as presented? Application is granted. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Now move to item 3 on the agenda. This regards 523 Roosevelt Avenue. It's a request to permit part of the detached dwelling to be located an increased distance from the front lot line for the construction of a rear yard addition. And the agent for the applicant is Ryan Polton. Is he there?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Polton, for your just for our information, your address, please.
Oh, I'm at Novatex, so that's 240 Michael Copeland Drive.
You have to look.
Yes.
Oh, Mr. Chown.
We're not
All right.
used to being asked that question, sir.
Yeah, well, this is rote. Anyway, before we begin, the oath or solemn declaration. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing, including visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
Yes, I swear.
Okay, so very briefly, Mr. Bolton. Anything to add to this application that is before us?
I have a presentation prepared. If the panel wants to hear the presentation, I'd be happy to provide that. Otherwise, there's nothing to add. The rationale is in the cover letter.
I don't think we really need a presentation. If you just want to just very briefly explain exactly what you want, what the request regards.
Absolutely. So 523 Roosevelt Avenue. It's an existing property in Westboro. It's developed with a 3-story detached dwelling. The proposed development is a rear yard addition. That's a 1-story addition. The requested variance is to permit a part of a building to be located 30 meters from the front lot line, whereas the zoning bylaw requires the building may be located no further away than 24 meters from the front lot line.
Okay.
In terms of the proposed addition, it meets the zoning bylaw requirements in terms of minimum rear yard setback, minimum interior side yard setback, minimum rear yard area. As well, it's subject to the Westboro development overlay, which requires a 4.5 meter softly landscape buffer. The proposed addition meets that requirement as well. So it's really only this one provision that intends to make the principal dwelling to be located a certain distance from the front lot line that we're seeking relief from. And in terms of,
and we note that there's no objections from the abutting neighbors.
thank you. Yes, for sure. No, we've not received any comments against this application. The staff report has no concerns with the application. And we did receive a letter of support from the property owner to the north of the property.
Yeah. Okay. It would seem to be the most impacted.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Any questions, comments from the members of the panel regarding this application? Okay, so in the matter, and we note that there's no requested conditions, that the planning department has no concerns with the applications. There are no comments in from any of the local agencies regarding this application either. So regarding 523 Roosevelt application, permit part of the detached dwelling to be located an increased distance from the front lot line for the construction of a rear yard addition. All in favor of the application? Application's approved. Good luck with the project.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you very much.
The application before us is item number 4 on the agenda, 637 Cummings Avenue. And this is an application to permit reduced rear and interior side yard setbacks and a reduced width of the landscape buffer for the construction of a 3-story apartment building. The existing 2-story apartment building will remain. And the agent for this applicant is Mr. Jacobs. Is he there? Mr. Jacobs,
Yes, sir. Good afternoon.
before we begin, you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I do so swear. I will note that at one point the sign had blown down but was reinstalled.
Okay. We understand that at the beginning of this process that the planning department was requesting an adjournment, and that they have subsequently removed their adjournment request. Is the planner there to explain that to us, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The original adjournment request was with respect to the additional information required by the forester to ensure that this application was coming to the Committee of Adjustment not prematurely, and through subsequent conversations with the applicant and the landscape architect, we're able to resolve those issues and it's able to be heard today.
Okay. Well, the forestry is represented by today. Oh, sorry. Hi.
Hi
So you're
there.
happy with the app? You're happy with the application now?
Yes,
Or
Mr. Chair.
happier?
Yes. Everything's been addressed.
Okay. Okay. But that, having that out of the way, Mr. Jacobs, please proceed.
Yes, unless you request it, I don't believe I need to make a full presentation. Our recommendations are in materials that were submitted. I would note that we have received two comments from residents who I believe are also going to be making presentations. Just in regard to the comments, the one dealt with really on a request that the building had be redesigned so that it met with the didn't require minor variances. We certainly strove in the design of this building to comply with all the aspects of the bylaw, but in the end to make it fit and to make for a good building project with 29 new housing units, it was necessary to make some adjustments to the zoning bylaw, which, as I've indicated in my rationale, in my mind, are appropriate variances to support the type of design going forward. There was also comments with respect to the potential on redeveloping adjacent sites in a similar fashion, and I think this matter was also addressed in the staff comments as well. The variances to the side yards and the reduction to what's proposed in the application could result in the potential for overlook into adjacent properties. At the present time, both of those are vacant. In one case, it's a parking lot. In the other, it's unused land. Should redevelopment occur, the units on the ends of these buildings, I have a slide in my presentation if you wish to see it, but these are all bedroom apartments. So the potential for overlook is really minimized in that they're not the main usable space in that. So the potential for redeveloping adjacent properties, I don't believe is in any way adversely impacted by our request. And as I've outlined in my rationale, the proposal is in keeping with the zoning bylaw, the official plan. The requests are minor, in my opinion, and it allow for a very appropriate redevelopment of this property.
You have a schematic you can show us that it identifies the 4 variances requested?
Yes, if we could go to.
Yeah, that looks like it.
Yes, this is the full scale. The next slide is a detail, but on this one, you will note down the right side is a landscape buffer between the parking lot and the adjacent property. Okay. That's one of the variances. It's supposed to be 1.5 meters. We're at 1.05. Okay. Currently, there's very little space between the adjacent driveway on the adjacent property and the existing driveway on this property. So what we would be introducing is a continuous landscaped area adjacent to the parking lot, even though it is somewhat substandard. We'll also be relocating existing garbage bins that are currently stored along that area into the development properly, so they would be less visible. So with respect to that, I think we're improving the situation with the landscape buffer and the reorientation of the parking spaces. The other 2 variances, well, 3 in if we could stay with the slide we had, is the rear yard, which is at the top of the slide. It's required to be 7.5, and we're providing 6 meters at the narrowest part. And the property to the north or to the east of this is the edge of the the aviation parkway. So it's a grassed green space. There's a substantial buffer between the edge of the road and our property line that is treed, as can be seen from the landscape plan that's on the screen. The two side yards, they're on the one side is 1.7, the other side is 1.8. The bylaw, because of it comes under a planned unit development, requires actually 7.5.
And out of curiosity, why that 7.5 setback from the property line for a PUD?
It's was addressed actually in some detail in the staff report, but it was really to ensure that in many cases the rear yards of properties in a PUD are adjoining adjacent properties. So there was a need, this type of development that we're proposing here wasn't really contemplated in the planned unit development type of scenario. So having a side yard in these locations, the proposal is actually if we were only putting a building at the rear of the property, we would not require a minor variance for the side yards, because a side yard for a low-rise apartment building, if it was the single use on the property, is 1.5 meters.
Yeah.
So that was kind of what we used for, the architect used in laying out the site to match up with what would have been required if it was a single use on the property.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
So those are the variances. It's the side yards, the rear yard, and the landscaped space on the south side of the property.
I note that, we now know that Fred is not requesting an adjournment. They no longer have concerns. The forestry department's happy with the compromise. We have no other comments from any other agencies in town, and there are no requested conditions. Any comments or questions from the other members of the panel regarding this? Mr. Wildman.
Thank you, Chair. Just for the staff, just curious, Ms. Linker, did you receive any commentary or concerns with respect to on-site servicing and stormwater management, given the density that's being proposed?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. This is a site plan control application, and that's being reviewed under the site plan control process. It appears that the application is coming to the Committee of Adjustment at this time because all comments that would have impacted the design of this development have been addressed through the site plan process.
Okay, so inherent in that is that if there were concerns, they would have been addressed.
That's correct. Thank you.
Thank you.
The site plan process is close to complete, Ms. Linker?
From my understanding, it is well on its way and close to complete.
Okay. All right.
If I could, Mr. Chair, the application went through its first circulation, and all the comments have been received, and we're just waiting for some stamped engineering drawings, but that will have completed the full response to all the comments on the application, site plan application.
So your process is just about complete.
Yes.
Just need a date stamp and the right location on the page. All right. Any other comments from the members regarding this application? On the matter of 637 Cummings, better reduced rear and interior side yard setbacks, reduced width of landscape buffer, construction of a 3-story apartment building and the existing 2-story apartment building to remain, which makes this a PUD. All in favor of the application as received.
Mr. Chair, we
As
do
amended.
have a speaker on the call.
Oh, okay, sorry. Pardon me. Before we do that, all right, I forgot. And who wishes to speak? I'm looking at 2 names, sorry. Mr. Obakuro, okay, please.
My audio going through?
Are you there, sir?
Yes. Well, my concern mainly is, again, back to the safety. issue, which is why can't an architect build an apartment within the standard property setbacks? All building setbacks should be uniform so that any maintenance and emergency vehicles can go around the building as required during an emergency. Yes, today, service vehicles carry more equipment than in the past, so reducing any setbacks today may cause more of a hazard and limitations in the future. I'm not a lawyer or a civil engineer, but if somebody is permanently hurt because they couldn't get help in time, the builder and architect won't be sued, but the committee of adjustment who have agreed or who have to have a good reason why the setbacks were changed, potentially causing the problem. But that's my personal opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, well, I think you've heard from Mr. Jacobs that if this was a single building on a piece of property, that the side yards would be 1.8 meters, which is the case. So because it's a PUD, there's a 7.5 meter side yard setback, but there's no contemplation to allow vehicles into the rear of that building, Mr. Jacobs.
Oh, there is not.
Okay, so this is just site design that precludes any vehicular access. So Mr. Obukuro, thank you very much for your opinion, but it's I think the issue has been it's a non-issue for this particular application. We also have a Mr. and Mrs. Quenville who had at 17 Highburn who may wish to speak. Don't know if they're here.
I don't see them on the call, but if they could raise their hand, I'll bring them in.
Okay.
I'm not seeing them.
Apologies to the area resident. I wasn't really trying to cut you out of the process. I just had I had the speakers page obscured with another piece of paper. Anyway, so to get back to where we were, all in favor of the application before us as received. Application approved. Good luck with the project, Mr. Jacobs.
Thank you.
Six. Application before us. Is item 5 on the agenda. This is application 933 Gladstone Avenue to permit a reduced building step back for the construction of a new 9-story and 18-story mixed-use buildings on the site. And the agent for the applicant is Mr. Bede. Is he there?
Hello, Mr. Chair and committee.
All right, before we begin, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee is posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and for the record, your address, please.
We're at 396 Cooper. I'm with Foten Planning Consultants.
So we've reviewed the application, and we note that the planning department has no concerns with the application. There are no comments from local agencies. There are no requested conditions. Do you have anything to add to the submissions that we've received to this point?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a full presentation if required. I don't believe that is the case here. I would also like to add that this application is part of a broader redevelopment program for the property, the larger property through Ottawa Community Housing. We are in the final stages of a plan of subdivision application, recently receiving the draft approvals, as well as the final stages of a site plan control application for this building, with all comments addressed at this point, and just now awaiting this final step and then concurrence to the conditions and registration of the site plan control. So this project has been ongoing for quite some time and received a full review from city staff.
That's what I was going to ask where you were in the site plan control process, but you're saying, you're indicating it's just about complete.
Yeah, the final step.
Questions, comments from the members of the panel regarding this application? No. All right, so in the matter of 933 Gladstone Avenue, permit a reduced building step back, and that's a 2-meter step, and reducing the 2-meter to 0, I believe, Mr. Beebe.
And that's correct, Mr. Chair, but only in intermittent locations along the front facade. The majority of the building achieves that provision.
Yeah, we understand that. Anyway, the construction of a new 9-story and 18-story mixed-use building is all in favor of the application as presented. All right, application's approved. Good luck with the project.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee.
Very welcome. Application before us today. Regular agenda are 505 and 507 Churchill Avenue. And these are applications to permit the conversion of a 3-story triplex dwelling to a low-rise apartment building. And the agent for the applicant is Mr. Segreto. Mr. Segreto.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members.
And Mr. Segreto, before we begin, you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time.
I do swear.
All right. We note that the planning department has some concerns with the application, and specifically, and I'm reading from their report, staff have some concerns with the variances to permit parking where it is prohibited on the subject site due to the lot size, because despite the lot size, it would not be required for this development. And it is being provided at the expense of the opportunity to provide sufficient on-site soft landscaping. So with that in mind, Mr. Segreto, please proceed with your application.
I have a PowerPoint if you want to see it, or I can explain it.
Yep, please do.
Mr. Chair, this committee members, this is the subject property, number 505 and 507 Churchill. As you can see there, 2 3-story triplexes that have been constructed approximately 3 to 4 years ago. This project did go through a site plan approval at the time, and we received all the proper approvals for it with respect to landscaping, with respect to parking, et cetera, at the time, which we were permitted to have 3 spaces per unit. Since then, the zoning has changed in this particular neighborhood, and it would give us the opportunity and allow us to at least use the basements now, which were presently used by the first floor tenants, to be converted into 2 additional 1-bedroom units. What we do have here is we have a building with 2 2-bedroom units, and on a 3rd floor, I believe, a 3-bedroom unit, and now providing the 2 extra units in the basement would be a 1-bedroom unit, which would be affordable housing that we would allow for this particular site. With respect to the parking and the amenity space, you can clearly see that with the units that are presently there, they do have balconies and they do have amenity there. In addition to that, if you go to my site plan, you will see, that's the survey plan. You'll see the existing 3 parking spaces that are there. In addition to that, there's greenery off to the side and there's greenery off to the back. There's about 10 feet by about 20 feet or so on one unit, and a little bit more on the other side, which is about 15 feet by 22 feet, which is, in my opinion, enough space for amenity for these basement units, should one want to put a picnic table there, have a barbecue, et cetera, et cetera. With respect to the parking, it is a condition that has been approved and that my clients want to retained due to the fact that the leases that are in place for these units include the parking space for each unit. The additional units will not have any parking. As you can see, it's on a main artery. It's on Churchill Avenue. There's plenty of bus routes and so on and so forth in the area. And I believe that this is a good development of good space, which is not being used. And with respect to the variances that we are requesting on this particular site are just legalizing or putting the existing two buildings into motion, where we're not changing or altering any of the site, and we're not changing or doing anything to the building on the outside other than creating 2 additional units per building on this property.
Well, in regards to the variances, variance A, regarding the interior side yard setback is an existing condition,
It is an existing condition.
and variance B is existing as well,
That's correct.
and variance C is existing.
I believe it is.
And variance D is a result of the conversion to 4 units.
I believe so, Mr. Chair.
And variance E.
It might
again,
be
is because
because
you've gone
we're
to 4
converting
units.
to a 4-unit, correct?
And variance F. That exists already.
I think it's all asphalt that we have, and it has some of the, from the parking spaces it exists. That would be existing. The interlocking
And variance G.
would be to permit or to allow the three parking spaces in the back, which presently exist.
And they were approved with the variances in 2019. And the site.
Yes,
you had a
they
site
were.
plan- You had a site plan in 2019 for that project?
Yes, we did. We had a site plan for this application, yes.
So the only 2 new variances really are D, to reduce to permit a reduced rear yard landscape buffer of 1.31 meters. And E, which is to reduce the permit soft landscaping area 23.77.
That's correct.
Which is less than the requirement, or was adequate when this was a 3-unit dwelling.
Yes, sir.
Does the planning department wish to comment? I know they have concerns regarding this application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You summarized my concerns pretty well. I'll just add that the city policies are explicit in prioritizing soft landscaping, and the provision of parking has a secondary nature and is even prohibited on the subject site for low-rise apartments. So this building turning from a 3-unit dwelling into a low-rise apartment triggers this prohibition.
Okay. Right. Understood. Thank you, Ms. Linker. Any questions or comments from the members? Mr. Wildman.
I just want to be clear on this. It's not that what's there today was a problem in the past. It's what it's being proposed today that triggers all of these changes, Ms. Linker, or is that how you would describe it?
From what I understand, yes, that's how I would describe this situation, specifically with respect to the zoning changes for the R4U, I believe it was the R4UD zone, triggered the requirements for additional soft landscaping and the prohibition of parking for low-rise apartments on the subject site.
So physically nothing changes, but the addition of the 2 units triggers different performance standards in the zoning bylaw. Is that a better way to say it?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Ms. McLean?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just Ms. Linker, just on the parking, the non-permeable asphalt driveway access and the 3, I think you just answered the one on the parking spaces. The non-permeable asphalt driveway, is that because of the change in use?
I don't believe so. Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe that is a new zoning requirement that was introduced through the R4 zoning review. And that would be a additional performance standard that would be triggered through the change of use to be compliant with the current standards of the zoning bylaw.
Okay.
So I'm not sure I follow. Is there a right to have this non-permeable asphalt driveway when it was approved as the 3-unit? Or you're saying because there was the change in the zoning, it's now a requirement for the triplex or the low rise?
Through you, Mr. Chair, my understanding is that there's been changes in policy direction and in the zoning bylaw amendment from the 2019 application compared to today. So I believe both a 3-unit dwelling and a low-rise apartment are required to comply with this provision. And sorry, I'll just defer to my colleague, Ms. O'Connell.
Ms. O'Connell. Please.
Mr. Chair, if I just might add, that's a new performance standard that was added, as Ms. Linkler expressed. And so because of that, if the property was to remain in its current use, it would become a non-complying situation with regards to that specific performance standard. So they could either bring it into compliance by requesting a variance to that specific one, but through this application, they've essentially added it on as an additional minor variance. But that's the situation with, so it's required because we're looking at the entirety of the variances requested in the change in use, but it was for the triplex itself, it would be a non-complying situation because it was constructed prior to that provision coming into effect in our zoning bylaw.
Thank you for that. That's helpful. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Wildman.
Just to jump on the tail end of that line of questioning, I thoroughly understand now what has triggered this. I guess my only sort of follow-up question to that is the whole discussion around permeable and non-permeable is always about maintaining capacity within a sewer system, a storm sewer system. During the course of the review, did any concerns come up with respect to storm sewer capacity?
Through you, Mr. Chair, through the review of this application, I'm not aware of any concerns from the department with respect to that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Linker. Thank you, Ms. O'Connell. Any other questions for Mr. Segredo or staff regarding this application? We have one other speaker for this application, Mr. Fickner, 465 Tweedsmuir. Is he there?
Sorry, yes, I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Fickner.
This is the third time this development has been brought before the committee. First time was to allow 2 buildings to be built with a reduced front yard, reduced width. Second time was because the building was not built in accordance with the approved variances or with the approved building plans. And the building, instead of being 1.2 meters from the property line, was reduced to 1.13 meters from the property lines. On 3 occasions, despite complaints from neighbors that the building seemed too close to the property line, city staff said it complied. But when we finally got the survey, it was very clear that it did not comply. And so a compliance order was issued on the building for 3 things: bring the building into compliance with the approved plans, bring it into compliance with the zoning, and bring it into compliance with the fire safety requirements of the building code, which it did not meet. In order to cope with those, in the first instance, new plans were approved. So the building was never changed to accommodate to comply with the existing plans. The zoning was changed, so it wasn't brought into accordance with the zoning. And it's highly questionable whether, well, let me state it differently. Because of the complexity in the way in which the fire safety requirements are set out, it's not entirely clear that the building fully complies even now with the fire safety requirements. The building was designed originally, as one can imagine, to accommodate 5 units, despite the fact that only 3 were initially permitted. So let's look at this. There are a number of these variances that are requested that
I
deal
can't hear
with.
you, Mr. Fickner, and you're gonna have to get closer to your microphone.
Oh, can you hear me
Cutting
now?
out. Yeah, you were cutting out.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
There are a number of them that deal with the permeable surface, and it's not simply with sewers. The problem is in the area, there's a great deal of clay. And when there's a requirement under Section 4 of the building code that buildings must not reduce or change the amount of water getting to this clay, particularly since it shrinks, and that can cause structural damage on adjacent buildings. And so the reduction of the permeable surface has other consequences as well. But there are a couple of things that I would like to raise very specifically. In respect of the request for the parking, and that is the big issue here. The parking, there are requirements set out in the zoning bylaw that show when compared to that the parking spaces do not comply with the requirements set out in the zoning bylaw, whereas the minimum width required for each parking space is 2.6 meters, and in fact they are only 1.74 meters, or roughly 2 feet 9 inches narrower than is allowed. There's also a requirement of the aisle between the 3 parking spaces on each side. It is 6.7 meters, I believe, 6.7 meters, and it is shown on this drawing as being 5.8 meters. So going through the driveway, there's now an issue as to whether the vehicles can adequately turn into those extremely narrow, far non-compliant spaces. There's a third issue, which is vitally important, I believe, and that is that in opening up those 2 basement apartments, those doors would open directly onto the driveway. And there are provisions in the zoning bylaw, very explicit provisions that say that driveways leading to parking spaces must be used exclusively for that purpose. You can see the potential problem here. A child is angry with his parents and runs out of the door, and of those 4 doors now on the driveway, and encounters a car going in or going out of the parking spaces. Someone carrying goods does the same thing. Someone who is handicapped does the same thing. So if those now become the access doors to apartment buildings, there's a life-threatening risk created by allowing those doors in clear violation of the provisions that say driveways must be used exclusively for that purpose. So I believe that this application would add to the risk that already exists and create a life-threatening condition, which would pose consequential liabilities for the city and its taxpayers.
Thank you, Mr. Fickner. Mr. Segreto, you've heard Mr. Fickner's concerns.
With respect to
Maybe
the
we could put
doors,
that, maybe we could put the site plan for the project
Yeah.
back up again.
not it. Okay, parking spaces are all. To address the issue of parking space sizes that he was questioning, the existing parking space sizes, I have them in front of me. The widths are 2.64 by 5.2. That's what they are, and that's what they were approved by at the site plan. With respect to the doors that you have on the side, as I said before, we are not doing anything to alter the building in any way. Those doors were placed there at the time of construction when it was done 4 years ago. With respect to the side yard setback that this gentleman is talking about, at that time, the architect who did this building here, there seemed to have been some misunderstanding with respect of the firewalls and fire separations. So what has happened is, rather than the firewall sitting on top of the foundation, it actually cantilevered over. The steel studs were cantilevered over, which raised an issue of the side yard setback at that time. My clients went to a great deal of expense at that time to correct that, which was an on-site error that had happened 4 or 5 years ago. And again, with respect to the driveway and whatnot, the doors that this gentleman is talking about, we're not putting any doors. They exist and they are there right now as we speak.
And do they open in or out, Mr. Segreto?
They open inwards, not outwards, inwards.
All right. And I'm assuming that the planning department had no issue with those doors being part of, or two of those doors accessing a basement apartment.
My understanding is that there were no issues at that time.
Just for the planning department's reviewed these applications, and I'm assuming that they've refused them, renewed or reviewed them comprehensively. And you
Mr. Chair.
and your department saw no issues with these applications, Ms. Linker?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Staff did not have any concerns at the moment with these accesses.
And
Mr. Chair, if I could,
Mr. Fickner, I'm not finished. If the fire code issue that was raised by the resident has been resolved.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This, I believe, would have been caught through the previous severance of the property or the building permit application to construct the 3-unit dwelling.
Mr. Chair, if I could.
And we've heard from the applicant that the provided parking spaces in the rear are the correct size.
Mr. Chair, can I comment?
Can you wait for a moment, Mr. Fickner, until I finish? Thank you. So as far as the department is concerned, these spaces are of a legal size.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. From my review of the application, I believe that they were of a compliant size.
Okay. And the drive aisle between the two buildings is also a legal width, I'm assuming.
Yes, I believe that the resident was speaking to the aisle provisions for a parking lot, which requires, I believe it's triggered at 4 units or 4 parking spaces per lot. So since these lots only have 3 parking spaces per lot, this would just be under the regular driveway provisions.
Which is a narrower requirement.
I believe so. I don't have the numbers on hand, but I believe the requirement is 3 meters.
It's not 6.7.
That's correct.
Because you're not assuming bidirectional traffic in that driveway. You're looking at single direction vehicles in and out. Okay, all right. Very briefly, Mr. Fickner.
I wasn't speaking of the driveway. I was speaking of the aisle between the parking spaces. So it's not where you're driving in, it's where you turn. Mm-hmm. The definition of a parking lot as set out in the zoning bylaw says it's any space where more than 4 cars are parked. So it doesn't tie it to the lot in the definition in the zoning bylaw. And the bylaw very clearly, if you can't turn in a parking lot in it, you can't turn in 3 meters without the parking lot. The provisions incidentally, with respect to the spacing, the width of the parking spaces, if one looks at the drawing that was provided, it shows the full width, if I'm reading correctly, of the 3 parking spaces as 17.17 feet, which is less than 6 feet per width per parking space, rather than the required width as set out as the minimum width, not in a parking lot, for a parking space.
Well, we've heard from both the department and the applicant's agent that these spaces are a legal size, Mr. Fickner. So
I'm simply reading straight from the drawing.
That discussion, Mr. Fickner, is over. And as far as the drive aisle at the back is concerned, Mr. Segreto, how long have cars been parking in that backyard?
I believe since the building permit was issued, which was about 4 years or so ago.
Okay, so that doesn't seem to be an issue,
according to you.
Well, I'm asking Mr. Segreto, Mr. Fickner. It's not an issue.
Not at all.
No complaints from tenants and the fact that they can't get in and out and can't turn.
Not that I've heard.
And this would have been reviewed by the department and by the transportation people in the department, who would have looked at the at turning radius information and determine whether or not this was adequate.
Correct.
All right. All right. Okay. All right. Any other questions regarding this application? Comments? Ms. Oakeshott, please.
I have a question for Ms. Linker. Looking at the drive aisle, it does look very narrow. And if those doors were originally put there to access just a basement storage, but now they're accessing a residential unit, I guess I want to confirm that there isn't a requirement for a walkway or extra width to accommodate those doors acting as the primary access way to an apartment.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. A walkway to access the door to the secondary dwelling unit can be utilized by the driveway.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions from the members of the committee? All right. Thank you, Mr. Segreto. I note that there's no requested conditions here. We've had confirmation the fire code issues have been met. It doesn't seem to be an issue with either parking space sizes or aisle widths. This is the variances were triggered by the change in use from a 3-unit to 4-unit dwellings, and all but 2 of the variances that are requested for these units reflect an existing condition. So with that, members of the panel, all in favor of this application as received? All in opposition? Okay, just Ms. McLean. Was that a positive, Mr. Wilder? You're in, okay. So the approval carries, voted 4-1. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Mr.
much.
Segreto.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is item 8. And that is 214 Pretoria Avenue. And this is an application to permit reductions to a landscaped area, westerly interior setback and driveway separation, increased driveway width, and to allow on-site parking for the conversion of the dwelling into a 4-unit dwelling. And the agent for the applicant is Mr. Heyman. Is he there?
Hello, yes, can you see me?
Yep. Before we begin, you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I swear.
All right. You're aware, Mr. Heyman, that the planning department has concerns with the application?
I'm aware, yes.
Yes, and is the planner there and can articulate those concerns, please?
Yes,
I
thank
didn't
you,
mean to
Mr.
steal your
Chair.
thunder on the last one, Miss Victor.
That's okay. No worries.
All right.
Staff have concerns with the proposed conversion of the 3-unit dwelling to a low-rise apartment with respect to the variances to permit parking and reduce on-site soft landscaping. Staff note that the R4UB zone and the official plan are explicit in prioritizing soft landscaping, and the provision of parking has a secondary nature and is even prohibited on the subject site for low-rise apartments. Staff do not believe the provision of all the parking spaces at the expense of on-site soft landscaping meets the intent of the zoning bylaw or official plan.
Okay, All right. Thank you. So, Mr. Heyman, before we begin, how many units are now in the building?
There are 3 units currently.
Okay. This was the constructed triplex built in 2011, I believe?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. All right. Please proceed with your request.
Perfect. Thank you very much to the members for hearing me today. I believe that the soft landscaping and the parking in the rear of the property is the main point of contention for this application. I understand and fully support the premise of these requirements as it relates to newly built developments or converting an existing 3-unit building to say an 8-unit building, which, as I understand it, is now permitted on a lot of my size of my property. However, my property has been in place as is for 10 years. And when I built it, we actually had to remove the existing rear landscaping in order to accommodate the parking that was required at that time. So it seems unreasonable to me now to have to change again, simply to add in a single additional unit in the basement. I am permitted, for example, to use the basement space to expand the size of the first floor dwelling, which would not require me to modify any exterior conditions, but it could allow for the same amount of tenants living in the building as it would if I were to build this 4th additional dwelling unit. I believe it is more beneficial not to pursue this type of option, as it would increase the costs for potential tenants, which is contrary to the city's objective of obtaining additional and more affordable dwelling units within the city. Again, if I were building a new development today or adding anything beyond a single dwelling unit in an unfinished basement, then I'd certainly comply with these requirements without question. However, I believe my request for a variance in this particular case is minor and appropriate. All that to say, even though I personally believe this requirement is not appropriate specifically in this particular case, I did speak with each of my tenants to ask if they would prefer to convert the rear yard space into a landscape space for their use. And each of them unequivocally told me that they did not want to lose their parking spaces, regardless of what I was to put back there. To which each of them have signed a letter of support for me to proceed with this variance request. I also want to point out that I have, there is amenity space on the rooftop available to all the tenants. That is approximately 50 square meters. The bylaw, in my opinion, is in place to, at least in part, to ensure the rights of the tenants are supported and their living environment is pleasant and comfortable. But in this particular case, it is in opposition to that of the tenants. So it is for these reasons that I ask you to accept the variance request that has been put forward. Thank you.
Do we have a site plan of your property? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Let's just go through the variances very quickly. Variance A to permit reduced soft landscaping area of 0 square meters where the requirement is 35. Is that an existing condition, Mr. Hammond?
It is, yes.
Permit for motor vehicle parking on a lot of 339.19. Again, an existing condition.
It is, yeah. I believe so.
And
I believe they're all.
Triggered, that was triggered by the change from 3 to 4 units.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. The reduced westerly interior side yard setback of 0.93 again is reflective of an existing condition.
That's right.
Increased driveway width of 3.25 meters from the maximum of 3 is an existing condition as well.
That's right.
The landscape strip 0 meters separating the driveway from an interior side lot line. Again, that's already in place.
That's correct.
Permit a reduced soft landscaping aggregate rectangular area of 0 square meters, whereas the bylaw requires a soft landscaping of 25. That was as a result of it being built as a 3-unit dwelling, correct?
Converting it, yeah, converting it to a 4-unit, yeah.
So the conversion triggers this variance.
It's my understanding. Yes.
That situation already exists. You already have 0 square meters.
Right. Exactly.
And finally, variance G The rear yard setback at 27.4% of the lot depth of 8.471 meters. This is identified as a new variance, and that's as a result of the change in use from a 3-unit to a 4-unit,
Yes, I believe so, yeah.
or this is a change in the zoning bylaw provisions from several years ago. This is an R4 zone, correct?
It is R4, yes.
Okay, that's probably the new R4 provisions. So they're triggered. That's triggered by the fact that the new R4 position, new R4 provisions that came into effect after your building was erected.
Right.
Okay. And then, in your opinion, these variances meet the 4 tests?
I do believe so, yes.
Okay. Do we have any questions from the committee? Mr. Wildman, please.
Thank you, Chair, for planning staff. Sometimes planning staff says they have some concerns, and sometimes they say they have concerns. And I think the have concerns may be stronger language than the some concerns, although I'm not 100% sure on that. I guess when you hear the proponent suggesting that all 4 tests of that are required under the Planning Act have been met, but staff has concerns, which of those one or any others of those 4 tests is planning staff raising concerns about? Where do those concerns lie? I understand the argument you're making, but if you could tie that to the 4 tests, I'd appreciate that.
Of course, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I think the largest concerns that city staff have is maintaining the intent of the official plan. The official plan states in section 11.5 that variances to reduce the required area for soft landscaping should be tied to requirements for more intensive plantings. And despite that, where the purpose or effect is primarily to enable motor vehicle parking or driveways, the variances to reduce the required soft landscaping are contrary to the intent of the official plan. So that's the largest concern. With respect to the zoning bylaw, staff, since parking is prohibited on lots less than 450 square meters for low-rise apartment buildings, and it's at the expense of providing that soft landscaping requirements that were introduced through the new R4 zoning provisions in the rear yard, staff believe that is contrary to the intent of the zoning bylaw.
So in your opinion, it fails on 2 of the 4 tests?
That's correct.
Thank you.
So if this building wasn't being converted, it would be non-compliant with the new R4 zoning in certain respects?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For a 3-unit dwelling, it would be legally non-complying because the building was built before the new R4 zoning. However, now that they're changing the use, they need to comply with that. So the 3-unit dwelling would have been subject to the new soft landscaping provisions. However, the 4-unit low-rise apartment has that prohibition of the parking requirements.
Okay. So the change in the R4 would have turned this triplex into a non-complying use, and the change to a 4-unit apartment building puts it more or less in compliance with the zoning bylaw, basically. Okay. All right. Any other questions from the members of the panel? Note that there are no requested conditions regarding this application. No comments from Hydro. You're aware, Mr. Heyman, of the Ministry of Transport's comments that the subject land has been the ministry's permit control area. Require a building and land use permit for this development.
Yes, I've spoken to them already, yes.
Okay. All right. So thoughts on this application? Do we ask Mr. Heyman if he's going to, if he consider removing a parking space to provide more landscaped open space on site? Or do we vote on the application as presented? Mr. Wildman.
Well, Chair, I would have liked to have seen a more aligned outcome between staff and the applicant. It's not in anybody's interest to turn an application down. However, at the same time, from my perspective, the staff presented very specific provisions, both under the OP and under the zoning bylaw that are not being met. We only have to look at whether one of the 4 tests is not being met, and we were presented with 2. So, I mean, one suggestion might be for the applicant to request an adjournment to try to work something out with staff, or have us vote on it today. I know how I'm voting.
Mr. Wilder. Kent.
I agree with Mr. Wildman that, yeah, I'm pretty sure I know how I'm going to vote on this one. If the applicant wishes to try and see if there's a way to resolve the matter of the parking, if he wishes to adjourn this for further discussion with the department, I'd be agreeable to that. If not, we can proceed with the vote as is. And I'll vote accordingly. I'm not sure how the other members feel.
Thank you, Mr. Wilder. Ms. McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm prepared to vote on the application as it's filed today.
Okay. Concerns with any concerns regarding the reduction in or the possible provision of more amenity space in the rear?
Well, I think that's what we'd be voting on, is the lack of the landscaped area versus the provision of the parking. I think is a key point in my mind.
Yep. And so, Sharon.
Yes, I'm prepared to go ahead and vote on the file at this time.
Okay. So, Mr. Hammond, I feel like my colleagues do. Are you at all amenable to adjourning this to further discuss the issues you have with the planning department regarding this application?
I think based on what I'm kind of hearing is probably the best course of action. So I'll do that if that's an option.
Oh, it certainly is. Before we vote, Mr. Reno, another member of the planning department, you wish to say something?
Thank you for allowing me to speak, Mr. President. I just wanted to circle back on what Ms. Linker said earlier, in that 2 of the tests had failed. I don't think that fail is the right wording here. Staff feel like this could be done better to better meet those tests. However, I don't think we're in a position to say that those tests have failed, because those tests relating to the official plan and the zoning bylaw are set to meet the general intent and purposes of them. So we're not in a position to say that they have failed. However, we do feel that the site could be modified to better meet those tests.
Mr. Hammond, is there a possibility that you could have these issues resolved so that you could, I'm assuming we have space on our next hearing agenda?
I believe so, yeah. I'm just kind of trying to interpret what was just said there, and that is it is no longer the opinion of the staff that we failed 2 of the 4.
They're hedging their bets. Ms. Williams, do we have space on the next agenda?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, there is space.
Okay.
on the
Why-
March
why don't-
1st agenda.
Okay. So why don't, if you think you can
Okay.
get this resolved in
Okay.
2 weeks, Mr. Heyman, we can put you on the 1st of March agenda and get this dealt with.
Okay, that sounds good.
All right, so all in favor of adjourning this application until the 1st of March? All right. We're adjourned until then. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And the application we'll hear from today. The next application we'll hear is 623 Rowanwood Avenue. And this was adjourned November the 16th last year. It's an application to permit a reduced lot width, lot area, and total combined interior side yard setback and a front-facing garage for a new 2-story detached dwelling, the existing dwelling to be demolished. And the applicant is Mr. Abraham Karimi. Is he there?
Yes, sir.
All right, before we begin, we have to administer the oath. You solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time.
I affirm.
Okay. And Mr. Segreto, you're going to be handling the presentation?
Yeah, I can do that.
All right. Well, we need a presentation on this one. And several questions actually from members while you're presenting, Mr. Segreto. Why the side yard reduction on a new project?
Okay.
And what's the need for a sloped driveway on up for this house? And I guess the other question is how many other sloped driveways are on this part of Rowanwood? So please proceed.
Mr. Chair, I think I would like the owners to at least attempt the presentation, and then if I can assist them, I will.
All right.
I've been brought in this at the 11th hour, so if they can give you a presentation, and then if I can help out in any way, I will.
All right, that's fine.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
Please proceed.
Yeah, good afternoon, Mr. Chair, and also the esteemed members of the committee. So my name is Ibrahim Karimi and my wife Rahil Goripur, and we are presenting the plan that we have it for the 623 Rowanwood Avenue. The next slide, please. Yes, so the site is located on the east side of Rowanwood Avenue, north of the Dovercourt Avenue, in the city of Ottawa, in the Mackellar Park neighborhood. The site is approximately 0.042 hectares in size and has 14 meters of frontage of Rowanwood Avenue. The site is surrounded by low-density residential uses, including a mix of detached, semi-detached, and low-rise apartment dwellings. Mackellar Park is located on the north of the Westwood Park, is located on the southwest. Nepean High School and Broadview Public School are located east of the site. Commercial use are further west on the other side of the Sherbourne Road along Richmond Road. There is an existing tree on the northeast corner of the site in the front yard. And there are also several existing trees on the abutting properties east of the rear property line. Next slide, please. There is an existing one-story detached dwelling on the site. A detached garage is located on the rear yard on the southeast corner of the site. There is an existing tree in the front yard. Next slide, please. The existing one-story detached dwelling is proposed to be replaced with a new 2-story detached dwelling. The new building has a footprint of 1,787 square feet, which is corresponding to 166.9 0.016 square meter square. The rear garage will be replaced with a front-facing garage. The front-facing garage will have street access via the driveway ramp from Ronwood Avenue. No trees would be impacted during or after the construction, which we provided the report in our presentation. So next slide, please. This is the elevation, which is after consulting the neighbors, we come out with, and there is no complaint about that. Next slide, please. So the current OP designated as general urban area on the Schedule B urban policy plan of the current OP. The general urban area designation permits the development of full range of the housing types. The proposed development is compatible with the existing context. A new OP, the inner urban transact designated as a neighborhood. The proposed development maintains low-rise residential character of the neighborhood by replacing the existing detached dwelling with a new detached dwelling. Zoning bylaw R10 or R10, R1 zone permits the detaching dwelling. R1 zone intended to maintain the detached residential character of the neighborhood. It's a mature neighborhood overlay. Site is subjected to streetscape character analysis, which was created for this site as well. Next slide, please. So essentially we have the zoning compliance, which essentially we have 4 minor variances, which we'll be discussing in the next few slides. Next slide, please. So we requested these 4 minor variances, which we will go through them one by one. So next slide, please. So we go with the 4 test. Is the variances minor? Lot and width, we cannot do anything with that because it's the existing condition that would enable the existing detached dwelling use to continue with the proposed development. The garage, is a front-facing garage variance is required to permit a new below-grade attached garage. Location of the new garage below grade enables the feature to blend with the street, would increase the rear yard area where the existing detached garage is located. No negative impacts on the site functioning or function, acceptable level of the deviation from the typical architectural patterns of the neighborhood. Relocation increases the outdoor amenity area, and it's an improvement of for the abutting properties to the south and east because of the existing structure will be replaced with landscaping. Interior side yard setback, 1.2 meters minimum of each side yard is met. Abutting properties have larger interior side yard setback of 2.995 meter for the property on the south, and also 2.27 meter for the property to the south. Next slide, please. Are the variances desirable? The site is located within a low-density established neighborhood that is characterized by 1 and 2 stories detached dwelling with varying exterior designs, which is driveway location, roof types, windows placement. The variation in driveway character scenes with expanded streetscape character analysis, which will be shown later on. Front yard setback of 6.3 meters is such that is aligned with the abutting properties to the north and south, creates consistent building wall along the street. New building would add visual interest while maintaining a compatible massing and scale. Next slide, please. So regarding the general intent and the purpose of the zone by law, is R10, which R1 zone is about the maintaining detached dwelling and ensuring compatible development with existing detached dwelling and residential land use pattern, compatible scales, massing and build form. A new detaching dwelling is replaced with existing detached dwelling. The garage location to the front will be provided additional amenity area in the rear yard because it will be replaced with the landscaping. 1.2 minimum for each individual yard is met. The garage location will be discussed more in detail in the next slides. So can we go to the next slide, please? So general intent of the purpose of the OP. So essentially the current OP is the proposed variances maintain the intent of the current official plan. The site is designated general urban area in the official plan, which is intended to accommodate all types of densities of housing in addition to other uses. The new one, we will propose the variances maintaining the intent of the new OP by maintaining the previous of the provisions of the inner urban transit and neighborhood designations. The proposed development would result in the residential development that is respects the low-rise build from the area while enhancing the appearance of the street through the updated design. Next slide, please. So this is the last few slides that we are showing the streetscape character analysis of the neighborhood. The performed streetscape character analysis indicates that 25% of neighborhood properties, which most of them are developed over the past 10 years, possess front-facing garage. Front-facing garage are existent and make up the character of the street. The analysis was performed on the Rowanwood Street and indicate only 21 property. However, next slide. However, if we go to larger area, on the broader perspective, when the streetscape character analysis is performed on a larger neighborhood, for instance, on the 211 properties, which is indicated on the slide. So those that they have a front-facing garage are indicated in the green, and the rest, which is they don't have the front-facing garage, indicated on they are indicated in red color. It shows that 92 of them they have a front-facing garage, which is corresponding to almost 45%. So then we believe that proposing a front-facing garage essentially fulfill the streetscape and won't negatively impact the neighborhood. Yeah. Sorry for going over the time.
That's all right. You realize that the streetscape character analysis is looking at 21 properties, not 211. And that you can find a lot of front-facing garages, but according to the city under section 140, there's a finite limit to the number of properties that you can look at. Anyway, okay. Thank you very much for your presentation. First question: why can't you meet your side yard requirements? This is a new build.
Yeah. So yeah, actually for the side yard that will impact the plan that we have for the house. So the inside plan. On the other hand, beside that one, so you know that the lot is a bit smaller than other lots in that area, and that's because 4 feet of the lot has been given to based on the history to the north side neighbor. So that will give us a bit more space to have the plan that we would like to have interior plan.
Okay.
There are members. Just 0.2 meters higher than the normal. So everything else in the side yards will be based on regular.
If I could hear from the planning department regarding the slope driveway for a moment. I realize that there's no variance attached to this because the slope meets the performance standard of the city, but generally speaking, I think we are understanding on this committee that the city really doesn't promote reverse slope driveways. Ms. Linker.
So we actually talked about that at the beginning, and actually the architect sent an email to the city, and we got the approval for that.
Yeah.
So
I'm asking, yes, I know, I'm asking the planning department.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Reverse slope driveways are strongly discouraged by the city as they may be susceptible to flooding of the property. So the designer must ensure that the building is protected from the 100-year HGL, and the roadway drainage will not be directed to the reverse slope driveway. These reverse slope driveway applications must be circulated by the city's water resources branch for approval and comments at building permit.
So there's no guarantee that this reverse slope driveway is going to be approved at the building permit stage.
I believe so, unless the applicant has contacted the city's water resource branch ahead of time to pre-consult. Otherwise, this will be reviewed and has the potential of not being approved.
And have you folks talked to the city water resources department regarding reverse slope driveways and potential impacts?
So yes, Mr. Chair, yes, we our planner communicated with the city and got the permission, which I sent the email, the corresponding email to the city just a couple of hours before this meeting.
So this is to the water resources department.
The branch name, the exact branch name, could you please read the exact branch
Yeah,
name?
if it's needed, I can get the email up.
We just sent the email.
That would probably help if we could put that in our file. If you could forward it to us.
I already forwarded, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Wilder. Comments?
Yeah. What would happen if you were not able to, if you had to meet the side yard setbacks as required? I mean, the depth of your foundation, are you going to be impacted in terms of the square footage of this house?
So there are, to be honest with you, there are several concerns that we do have. So in the past, if we don't go with any front-facing garage, my wife will have a serious problem because she has a very bad experience in the freezing rain, which once she fell down and got a concussions, and that was ended up in a terrible situation. In terms of the design, yes, it affects the footage of the house clearly. And in addition to all of these, we purchased an electric vehicle, and therefore we really want to have the electric vehicle to be inside of the house.
Thank you for that. One of your slides showed an address on Carling Avenue. Is that a mistake? This is another property that you're going to be bringing forward to committee. Is this what you have there? No, sorry. All right, thank you very much.
Sorry, it has been made, the presentation has been made by our planner before the planner that we were working. I think that she forgot that there, and I'm so sorry that we changed everything. I'm so sorry that we didn't meet that. She forgot a mistake.
So Ms. Linker, according to the department, you still have a problem with the front-facing garage, not necessarily the reverse slope driveway.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So staff still have concerns with the proposed attached front-facing garage, as this design is not consistent with the streetscape's dominant characteristics. And it's understood that the applicants will be sending that email confirming that the reverse slope driveway is permitted in this area by the city. However, staff believe that a design that retains the existing driveway location in the interior side yard to a detached garage in the rear would resolve both the streetscape character and potential flooding issues.
Any questions or comments from the other members of the panel as a result of our discussions? Anything to say, Mr. Segreto, even though you were brought in late? You're never at a loss for words.
My advice would be is to adjourn it for 2 weeks or possibly 4 weeks, and I would try to address the front-facing garage, and I would definitely address the side yard setbacks for the committee. If they would be willing to adjourn it, and I could sit down with them and talk to them, that's what I would do. I would try to avoid at least those two variances with respect to the garage and the side yard setbacks.
Mr. Ramey, you've heard from your from your agent. Would you be in agreement to adjourn this for several weeks or a month to resolve these issues? Reduce the number, the requests that you're going to be presenting with to us in the future? Or do we proceed today?
Of course, if the committee decide that, we will go with that. But I just wanted to make sure that this is because based on the streetscape that we mentioned, every house made in that area in the last 10 years have the front-facing garage. So that's not unknown in that area. I'm so sorry if my words are not the exact word that I should use, but we talked with all the neighbors, and actually shared our plan since last year with our neighbors. Nobody had any concern about our front-facing garage, about our even the weeds. So we talked with everybody around us, and they have no issue with the two variances that we have there. So if the committee are comfortable with that, we will be more than happy. We go and of course building the house, since it's a long time that we are in this process. If you mention us that we have to follow up again, we will do whatever the committee decides.
Well, you have the option of saying we're not changing your design, and then this panel can very easily reject your front-facing garage and agree with the planning department. And Mr. Segreto has suggested that perhaps a 2 to 4 week adjournment, the issues that are surrounding this application could be resolved. And he's approaching this from an abundance of caution position. And you may want to consider what Mr. Segreto has asked. We have one more agenda item on our agenda today. Why don't we step this down until we're finished the next item, and you folks can talk to Mr. Segreto. Would that be okay? Okay, all right. And I think Mr. Wilder has one comment to make. Mr. Wilder?
Yeah, I would strongly suggest to them, based on my vote, that I would suggest that they meet with Mr. Segreto regarding those two variances. I appreciate the situation with regards to the size of the house that you're looking to build in terms of square footage, square meters. There's a trade-off here, notwithstanding what your neighbors are saying. I don't know your situation in terms of the need for the square footage that you're looking to build, but I think that it would be wise to discuss this with Mr. Segreto, as well as the other variants as well with regards to the slope driveway. It's your decision. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wilder. So can we step this down so that you can just briefly discuss this with Mr. Segreto? Our next application will probably take us in the order of a little over 10 minutes. So it won't be much of a delay. All right. Okay, well, we'll step this down and we'll see everybody right after we finish the next application. Thank you very much. Next application on the agenda was also an adjourned item from February the 1st. And this is 19 A and B Garland Street. It's an application to subdivide the property into 2 parcels for the existing long semi-detached dwelling with a reduced pole width and parking space length for both units. And the agent for the applicant is Mr. Paquette or Mr. Davis.
Hi, we're both here.
Okay, so you solemnly swear, well, actually, we adjourned, so we don't need to go over the oath again because you've already sworn to the oath. All right, gentlemen, we adjourned this the last time because we wanted to see turning radius evidence from you folks.
Correct.
how well this parking situation would work.
So
And I
we've
think
updated our.
I'm gonna ask Mr. Wildman to kindly have a little discussion with you regarding the turning radius evidence that you provided us with.
Sure.
Mr. Wildman.
Thank you, Chair. Could the coordinator please put up the sketch that shows the turning radius? Yes. So that turning radius, if I understand the notes below, is a projection based on information provided for a Kia Soul turning radius. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
And so this is not like the Transportation Association turning radius. This is what you've done to project what a Kia Soul would turn like. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So if I look at that, going in, it appears as though there's at least a 2-point turn. Sort of an in, then back out a bit, and in.
I think it could be done in one, but a 2-point turn would also just make it easier.
It appears from the information that's shown there, and I'm more accustomed to using the TAC turning templates, but it appears as though you sort of get close to the sort of the column at the side of the door, and then you point closely to the wall. So it looks to me like you need to sort of go in and come out a bit and then go back in. That's just what it looks like to me if I were using a normal TAC turning radius. So can you explain to me how you get out?
So I think you would pull out and then back down the driveway, or you could do the opposite and back toward the entry door to the rear unit and then drive out normally.
Yeah, it's hard for us to sort of visualize that because that's not something that we see in front of us here. It looks like, and so we have the dash line is a property line.
The dash line is the second floor overhang.
So okay, and then the grayed outline then is a what?
Oh, I'm sorry. The dashed kind of more grayed outline is the second floor overhang.
So on the right, there's a dark line, and normally you
That's the
delineate
property
a
line.
property line with a short and a long. Is that the property line or the overhang?
The property line.
It is the property line. Is there any physical barrier there, or like what happens there?
There's a fence on the neighbor's property.
Okay, inset in the neighbor's property a distance, or roughly at the property line?
Probably the standard 6 inches. I don't know exactly how far
Okay,
it's inset.
so not a lot of play there, I guess. We're talking inches at best. Okay.
Correct.
So it appears to me that it would be difficult to back out and then drive out forward, if you follow what I'm saying. So turn towards the door up at the top and then pull out forward. It just doesn't look like that would work.
And that would be true of the we're showing the bottom garage. That's certainly true of the top garage.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So in any event.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say if you just scroll a little bit further, you can see that that's the garage where the photographs were taken.
Mm-hmm.
So the homeowner parked the car in the garage, and this is the garage that's kind of further up the property at the top.
Right. And we don't see any dents in the drywall, which I guess is a good thing. So I guess, do you have any feedback on that? Like it does look like there's at least a bit of a jockeying that has to happen there. And at the top one, the only way to get out, well, let's look at it 2 ways. At the top one, the only way to get out is get your car backed out, whether that's 1 or 2 moves, and then back out. Correct?
Correct. And it looks like in the photograph that they must have backed into the garage and then they'll pull out normally. So they must have done it in reverse.
Okay, and then and that may be with purpose too, because you maybe backing out onto the street is not
right.
And then it does look like to me. Did you hear anything from them about whether they have to do more than just a turn in, or sort of? It looks to me like when I look at those. The path of the car, so you have the wheel path and then the nose of the car. it looks like to me, there's at least 1 second move to sort of get in, sort of a
There could be.
slightly in, back up a bit, and then back in again. Did you get any feedback from them on that?
To be honest, I didn't. They just sent us the pictures.
Okay.
But your intuition is probably correct.
Okay.
I will say that the reason we're kind of in this situation is because we were trying to keep the garage doors from not facing the street while trying to promote density and this new building type. So, it was all these balances of trying to make this happen in this neighborhood on this
Okay,
lot.
and then there's some subtleties about why this is happening too, above and beyond that, and we'll get into that.
The sequencing of our applications, and then
Right.
what's happening afterwards, which triggers this parking requirement.
Right. So we'll get into that in a minute. I just wanted to make sure that we understood your turning. So safe to say that the one at garage 19B have to back out, whether that's by 1 or 2 sort of in and out movements.
Correct.
And the other one, we're not sure because there is a fence line close to the property line. Maybe they can get out, maybe they can't. They may be backing out as well.
It would be the same. It would be the same as the top one for getting in and out. But at the top one, I think you would need to back out the driveway or back in the driveway and then pull it normally. I think that with the lower one, they would have the opportunity to back out and back towards the door of the rear unit and then pull out.
Right. So what the Transportation Association, usually their guides have sort of a category of car, small car, big car sort of thing. And
right.
I would assume this car would fit into the small car category because the big car is quite a bit larger.
Right. I should note too, and I think I mentioned it last time, that the parking space length reduction does meet the City of Ottawa's standard for a compact car. It just doesn't meet the standard for a full-size car.
Right.
So the garages were designed for a compact car, which it does meet, but we're required to meet the larger car requirement. And that's why we need a variance.
Okay, so I mean, it's not the most ideal of turning radii, but you've explained yourself a little better. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to see you try to get my Dodge Caravan into either one of those parking spaces, gentlemen. That's why the Transportation Association of Canada's turning radius protocols are what you should be using.
Right.
Okay, we also had some other questions about trees. You're going to provide, apparently the forestry department wants you to plant 2 trees. Exactly where are they going to go? Because I think Ms. McLean mentioned the fact that there doesn't seem to be a lot of space.
Right. So we would plant the first one on the corner, fully on our property, but it would need to be a small to medium tree, I think would be most appropriate. And then in the back corner, we could have a slightly larger tree. There's plenty of space in the back.
All right. Was that satisfactory, Ms. McLean?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, no, I just noted the comment from forestry that 1 new tree had to be provided on each new lot. And given the pole configuration, I wondered how that was going to be accomplished, but I'll leave it to forestry to work it out with the applicants. Thank you.
And I think there's actually one question to planning. In their report, they refer to the parking being, I believe it's non-complying because they're at 4.6 meters. This is a new build. How can these be non-complying? And this should have been picked up in 2019.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. It's my understanding that if they were not complying with the zoning bylaw at the time and did not receive a variance, this must have been an oversight during the zoning review process.
Yeah, so quite frankly, referring to these as non-complying is incorrect. They are. This was a mistake made by somebody. Although I do remember the application and how we handled this, and it was, I think it indicated to us at that time, the parking would be in the driveway. And there was no real discussion of garages or lack of depth of space in garages. So obviously there was information missing from the first hearing.
It appears.
Which triggers this one. Anyway, gentlemen, you understand that there are the conditions, requested conditions, independent services, joint use and maintenance agreement on title for Noisman 500 meters of an LRT rail station, agreement on title for Noisman 100 meters of Scott and Bayview Station, and a wholesale warehouse at 90 Bayview Station. They're there. And the tree planting plan you've addressed.
Yes, we understand the conditions.
Okay. I think Mr. Wilder has a question. Mr. Wilder, please proceed.
Thank you. You know, I appreciate, I've gone and I've actually gone to Garland. I happen to have seen your project. And, you know, I have a real issue when we're doing this new type of development. I'm very sorry, but regardless of the fact that we're trying to accommodate smaller vehicles here, and you're going to have to find people obviously with smaller vehicles, and you're trying again to provide parking space for each, of course, and notwithstanding there's no dents in the drywall. Very cute. I'm really not supportive of this. I'm very sorry. I just feel that it's a new concept. We've got to learn from it. I just don't think in my mind approving this today is the right way to go. I just feel that in future projects like this here, as the chair has said, where we expected it to go, I remember this application, and I'm surprised that this is how it's evolved. And if a mistake was made at the time, well, so be it. In any case, I will not be. We can divide the application, Mr. Chair, when we go vote on this.
You're in favor of variance C, Mr. Wilder, reducing the pole width?
Yes, I'll support the pole width.
And is that pole width now 2.2 meters or is it 1.65, gentlemen?
Adam?
Yes, so the requirement is 2.2 meters, but we're asking lenience to 1.65.
1.65.
And that has to do with ensuring that these services are on independent, that they don't cross property lines.
Yeah, I actually agree with Mr. Wilder. I don't have a problem with variance C, but I certainly am not in support of variance A and variance B. Ms. McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I echo the same. I will not be supporting variance A and B, but will approve variance C.
Okay. Good luck, Cheryl.
Yes, exactly. I feel the same way.
Mr. Wilder.
The same, Chair.
All right, gentlemen. You've heard from us individually. We haven't taken the vote yet. I'm assuming that nothing can be done given we're in an as-built situation. But I don't think this committee is going to support variance A or variance B. We have no problems with variance C. Ms. Linker, you had a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to add that the severance of the property does not trigger this non-compliance issue with the parking. So staff appreciate that the applicants are coming forward to formalize this at this time.
All right. They're going to have 2 for sale properties with zoning violations in place, which makes it a little difficult to sell, I'd say. Anyway, gentlemen. We've got this before us. I think you've heard individually from each of us and collectively all in favor of the of variance A. Not approved. All in favor of variance B. Not approved. All in favor of variance C for the pole width. So your application is granted in part. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. So if we could call back item 9, 623 Rowanwood.
Hi.
Hi there.
Yeah.
I think you folks have enough time to discuss?
Yes, we did. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Mr. Green, okay, we suggested possibly an adjournment to resolve the issues, and your position is?
Yeah, so my wife, Mrs. Sergioto, and myself, we had a conversation. We prefer to look into these two cases and coming back again to the committee.
Would 2 weeks be sufficient?
No, 1 month.
1 month? Okay.
1 month.
So Ms. Williams, what are we looking at in March? What's the date?
It would be March 15th would be the next, would be
And
1 month.
And we have
Okay.
space on the agenda?
Yes, there is space on the agenda.
Okay. All right, so everybody's in agreement that we adjourn this application to resolve some of the issues to the 15th of March. All in favor of adjournment? All right. We'll see you on the Ides of March.
Thank you so much.
15th of March.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks very
Thank
much.
you, Mr. Chair, and also the members of committee. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. And that concludes the agenda of the 15th of February Committee Panel 1 Committee of Adjustment for the City of Ottawa. We'd like to thank all participants and wish you